Welcome back to the channel, everybody. How you doing? I just want to say I appreciate you guys being here. Today we're going to talk about a series that I finally finished, and I just really want to talk about it because I can. That's the beauty of it. What I'm going to start doing is after I finish a book series or read like a whole, like all the author's books, I want to do a giant video about each one and just really talk about them. Or I might just do a couple of their books and then do a big discussion. Today, if you guys clicked on this video, you already know. I'm going to do a discussion and ranking of A Court of Thorn and Roses, the series, or ACOTAR series, whatever. I think it's just called ACOTAR series. We're going to talk about those, and I'm actually pretty excited to really dive into this. I give my thoughts about this plenty of times, and I want to try and talk about it in a way where I'm going to give you some pros, and I'm going to give you some cons on these books, and then I'm going to just rank them all. And I'm going to rank them pretty quick. And then I'm going to give you a final rating of the series as a whole, and if I would move forward to read more Sarah J. Maas's books in the future. And the answer to that is going to be, well, probably pretty clear. If you're already watching this, you're probably gonna be like, well, I already know the answer. Who knows? Maybe I'll surprise you. I doubt it, but that's what we're here for. Pros. First thing I want to get out of the way is I think the way that Sarah J. Maas really does try to grow the world building, I think it does a pretty decent job. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, it's on the levels of The Wheel of Time, but she does do a pretty good job at making you feel like you are in a different world and you don't feel like, oh, well, this could be in modern times. Like she does a pretty good job at really making you do feel like you're stepping into a whole new world in some elements, and I do enjoy that. I kind of wish she did a little bit more of that, but maybe she does in the future books, or maybe she does in her other series. I don't know. I haven't read them yet. But I will say that's a very good element I do like, because when I do dip myself into fantasy, I want to be in a fantasy, unless you know it's like an urban fantasy novel, like the Dresden Files is urban fantasy, and that's in Chicago. Now, he does a pretty good job at making it feel like a fantasy because there is fantasy elements and there is other world. So you have those elements in like the Dresden Files. Now this is completely not in our world, and I kind of like how she does kind of pull it where you have two different sides, where you have the humans, then you have the fairies, and the humans hate the fairies, and the fairies hate the humans because the humans hate the fairies, which is interesting. It kind of gives you like the old kind of war thing where like you're like, why do you guys hate each other so much? And they can't really give you like reasons. They give you reasons what happened like hundreds of years ago, and it's kind of like, get over it. It's time to move on. Most of these people you had beef with are kind of dead now. It's one of those things. That's what goes through my head when I read these kind of things. And it always cracks me up when I read like fantasy books, and that's like one of the biggest issues is they're like, well, my great granddad did this, and he's not alive anymore, but we still got beef with you guys. And you're like, why? Why? We could move on from this. He's dead. He's literally gone. He's never coming back. So I will say, those are some pretty good pros I enjoy. And another thing, this is a mixed one. So the characters in these books, I'm going to put them in mix. There's some characters I actually do like, and I kind of wish there was more screen time. And then there's characters I just did not really like, and I wish there was less screen time. Feyre is probably my least favorite character in this whole series. She's not a very fun protagonist to be behind, personally, unless you're Ryzen. Maybe that's why. But I think it's a struggle when you are first person, because if you don't like the main character and you're following the main character through the first 3 books of the series, oh boy, it's really, really tough to get behind that and like Feyre, because she's just not a very likable kind of character. I just really had a hard time liking her. But then you have her other characters in his books like Nesta. Nesta's a really fun character. I enjoyed Nesta a lot. And then you have her other sister, Elaine, who doesn't really get a lot of light in these series. She's kind of more of just like, she's just there, kind of like an airhead. And it's like, well, I kind of wish you gave her a little more character, but she doesn't. She's just there. And then when there's like issues, Feyre and Nesta like are there to just like support her, and then Elaine's like, I want to be my own woman, but it's like we don't get to see that ever. She kind of just does in the back, and we still don't get to see her growth. So that's one of my issues with that too, and that's why I'm not the biggest fan of first person novels, especially in fantasy, because I wish there was more POV chapters with Elaine and with Nesta and with Rhysand and with Cassian and with Azriel. You know, you have so many characters, but the first 3 books are basically, I'm going to say not 100%, but majority of it is through the lens of Feyre. So when you have these other characters, it's just like, oh, I can only like him, I can only see him when they're with Feyre. And sometimes I want to see them on their own, which in itself isn't like an issue because it can be done. I've read plenty of first-person fantasy novels that have done that, but I feel like this one was kind of lacking in that element. Now we're going to talk about another con of mine that I just didn't like, and that's first-person. Myself, I'm not the biggest first-person fan in general, because the issue with that is, the main character is never going to die. And it really strips away the not ever letting the character die because it's first person, so you never know if the character's going to die or not. Well, you always will know. Oh, yeah. Pharaoh's never going to die. She could get hurt to the point of almost dying, but she's never actually going to die. It might sound like I'm just being a hater. Maybe I am. Everyone call me that. Whatever. I don't care. When I'm reading books and it's always first person, I'm not even just saying just in general. This is just a general thing instead of just ACOTAR. Like, every time I read a first person and it's a fantasy novel, I'm like, cool, so the main character's not gonna die, which is really annoying because it's like, they're just not gonna die. So you just sit there and you're reading these books and there's a lot of things that are going to happen to them, but it's like, well, I know the result to it every single time. Like, I read a book a couple years ago called The Covenant, which was a first person novel. Did the main character go through some things? Yeah, but he never died because we know he wasn't going to die. Same thing with the Kingkiller Chronicles. Like, Name of the Wind, first person, went through some things, did not like him that much. He's arguably probably the worst character I've ever read. He wasn't going to die because he's the main character and he's writing his own story. So that was like my issue, is I'm not the biggest fan of first person. So when I'm reading this series and there's like these big events coming up, it's really, really hard for me to get behind that something's actually going to happen to Feyre. Now, if this is all written third person, especially in, like, we'll use example like ACOTAR, and how ACOTAR ends, where basically Feyre is like doing like a gladiator arena style of Hunger Games where she has to like win Tamlin's heart. If that was in third person, I actually would be more nervous because it's like, oh my gosh, what? Could she actually die? Now, does she get hurt in these books? Yeah, in the first book, I think if I remember, she breaks her arm and she gets healed, but it's written in first person, so again, it's like, well, she ain't gonna die. It's one of those things. That's like one of my biggest issues when it comes to first person novels. Now, another pro of mine is books 3.5, the novella, and then book 4 is multi-POV, and arguably one of the best ones. And every single time I've talked to people about these kind of books, every single person says book 2 and book 4 and the novella are the best books. And I realize it's because, well, book 2, it's because of Rysand, I know that. But book 3.5, the novella, and book 4, it's because it's multi-POV, and it's like, duh. Yeah, because it's a big cast, so you want to see all these other characters. The novella does a pretty good job of bridging between book 3 and book 4 really well, I think. Because if you skip it, you kind of don't know what's going on in book 4 at the beginning, which is good. I think it's a really good sales pitch because a lot of people are like, well, you should read the novella so you know what's going on. And it's not like it's a small novella either. It's almost 300 pages. But going into book 4 where it's like 800 pages, yeah, it's a chunky one. And it basically feels like it's just book 4 is just 1100 pages. Like, you could read them back to back and be like, oh, okay, well, it's book 4. So that is one thing I will also say as a pro is, as you can see, out of the 5 books, 3 of them are all pretty good. I would say that book 3.5 and book 4 are the best ones, and book 2 is kind of behind it. A lot of people like it because of Rysand. I think Rysand really does amp up the books a lot more. Like, book 1, you kind of don't know him too well, but everyone's like obsessed with Tamlin, but Tamlin's just not the greatest. And we'll get that in a moment too. But going into these books, I went in open-minded. I'd never go in being like, oh, I ain't reading these books. The only book I did that was with Fourth Wing, because Fourth Wing was just cringe. But I went in this one very open-minded because I wanted to read what kind of inspired a new genre of books. One thing I want to talk about is I want to kind of go back to characters on this. And with characters, I want to talk about male characters for a moment real quick. So she does a lot of tropes of enemies to lovers. That's a very, very popular trope in this series. Rysand and Feyre are enemies to lovers. Cassian and Nesta, enemies to lovers. And I'm going to tell you, both of them are not done well. It's very weak. It's in the way that she writes Rysand, it's kind of creepy. It's like a kidnapper thing, and it's just weird. And it's even weirder how much everyone's like, oh yeah, that's so hot. But it's like, it's weird because he like marks he makes a deal in the end of ACOTAR. So then Feyre has to go to Rhysand 1 week out of every month. She just, clearly she just hates him. But it's just a weird thing. It's just so, makes you really, like, the more you think about it, you realize how much creepier that whole aspect is. And to me, I'm like, what if that was like written as like a horror novel? Everyone would be like, oh my gosh, this is so creepy. It's one of those things. And of course, Feyre absolutely hates Rhysand. Why? Don't know. Tamlin doesn't like him, so she hates him. And it's like, but Rhysand doesn't hate her at all. So it's like enemies to lovers, they're not really enemies at all. She hates him because somebody else doesn't like Rhysand. Like, it's one of those kind of things. And same thing with like Nesta and Cassian. They immediately, and they're all mates, so that's one of the other things. But Cassian and Nesta hate each other, even though, and they're like enemies to lovers, but they're not enemies. It's one of those kind of things to me. It's like, these enemies are not truly enemies. They don't have issues. I explain it like, it's like the schoolyard bullying thing is like when a boy is kind of mean to a girl and like on recess, but it's because he has a crush on her. That's kind of what this is. And those are not enemies at all. It's just that. So that's how I was like looking at it. And now the biggest thing I wanted to talk about too is I didn't like how Tamlin was displayed in book 1 to book 2. I feel like, especially because these books are big, so I feel like if you did Tamlin's arc of how he's changed kind of to the dark side from book 1 to book 2, and you kind of let it go a little slower, a little more to like the halfway point part of book 2, it would make more sense. But Tamlin, immediately after book 1, he immediately just flops and does a 180 and just becomes a whole new guy. And she kind of hints towards it throughout book 1, but it's just like immediate in book 2, which kind of strips away, I think, a bigger plot twist with Tamlin. And I think it would have been more of an impactful thing with Rhysand. So that's like one of my issues with it. But I will say, I think she does a really good job at writing characters when they are together, like when they are romantic to each other. She does a pretty good job with that. I do enjoy Rhysand and Feyre's relationship. Rhysand does act like a guy sometimes, but the way he makes his like little sexual jokes and stuff, it reminds me of like how guys do talk to their girlfriends. Like I talk like that sometimes because it's just like, it's kind of a relatability, which I do enjoy. Issue is all the guys talk like that, and I'm like, well, not all guys talk like that. Oh well. But I will say the biggest thing is book 4 is the book of Nesta. That's what I kind of call it. And I think that book was really fun, but it also was 800 pages. And Sarah's problem in these books is like my issue when I was talking about like Wheel of Time is there's a lot of fluff that was so unneeded in these books. I would argue almost every single one of these books could have been trimmed, except for the novella, obviously, easily 100 pages. And I think the books would all be way better. I think these books would be a banger. Like, and that's what I said about Wheel of Time. Like Wheel of Time's like 13 books. If that series was shaved down to 7, that would arguably be one of the greatest fantasy series of all time. And this series would be a banger, but she really likes to just write. Is that a problem? No, she's a New York Times bestseller. I'm a guy in a spare room talking about her books, so she did a good job. So that's kind of how I've been looking about it. Like this discussion is more of like, I just want to express my feelings about this series as a whole. Now let's do a quick ranking before we really end this series and give you my rankings. And I would love to know what you guys, if you guys agree with what I'm saying about this series, or you guys tell me you disagree. It's cool. I don't really care. Tell me your opinions. I love talking about books, and I want everyone to talk and express their opinions to me regardless. So we're gonna make this kind of quick. I think it is, we're going to say book 4, we're going to say A Court of Silver Flames, A Court of Frost and Starlight, A Court of Mist and Fury, A Court of Wings and Ruin, and A Court of Thorn and Roses. So I think my favorite book out of this is the last book, and then the least favorite is ACOTAR itself. I think ACOTAR is just really weak, really weak. And it kind of gives you the Beauty and the Beast vibes, but also it's like, it does a whole, it's just, the ending just really ruined the book for me. That's all I gotta say for sure. But that is where I have it. And if I had to give a ranking, like a series, a rating for this series, I think I would give it like a 3.5 out of 5. I don't think it's not something I'm like, wow, this is an amazing series. But I'm also like, this is the worst series I've ever read. No, I don't think that at all. It's a fun series. It's a series. It's I think the best way to describe like one of these kind of series is when you go to the movie theaters and you kind of just want to shut your brain off and just enjoy it, and it's a popcorn movie. That's how I kind of think about it. It's not like when I go watch Dune It's where I'm gonna go watch the new Jurassic Park movie. There's gonna be flashy things, it's gonna be fun to watch, and you might get a thrill out of it. That's kind of the ACOTAR series to me. I'm like, it's a popcorn book series where I can just shut my brain off, not commit that hard to it, and just have a good time. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. What do you guys think about the ACOTAR series? Do you agree with what I said about the ACOTAR? Do you agree with some of my pros? Do you agree with some of my cons? Or do you think I'm just loony up the bin? I would love to know your opinion down below, of course. What other romantasy series you guys think I should read next? Let me know down below. And I will say this, would I read more of Sarah J. Maas's books? I'm not allowed to read the Throne of Glass series, so I guess I could read Crescent City if people really wanted me to, but I'm not allowed to read Throne of Glass. The fiance said no, I'm not allowed to read that one. And last but not least, make sure you guys stay safe, stay humble, and to someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay weird.